What's up, folks? Sean the Average Angler. We've got a great video for you in store today. We were gonna go fishing, high wind warnings. Just made the decision to be smart. We'll work on other things today, and we'll get out on January 1st. Hopefully catch our first bass of the year. All right, so today's video, beginner mistakes. Some of these are really easy to pick. Number one is definitely very, very easy one to pick and kind of self-explanatory at the same time, and that is casting. As a beginner, we can't really expect them to be good casters. However, casting is something we can practice. The importance of casting is we need to hit our targets, okay? When you're bass fishing, targets are prime time fish habitat, right? Could be tules, could be a laydown. Docks, pitching up under a dock, right on dock piling, so your bait falls down the dock piling. Prime spots to get bit. Now you can go in the backyard, you can go down to your local school or park and practice casting. Learn to use a bait caster where you have more control and get good at casting, okay? Nothing worse than having a beautiful spot, tules, branches, okay, and there's a nice little pocket there, and you just need to pitch right into that pocket nice and tight, and you crash into it, causing them to shake and make a bunch of noise. Now that fish is aware that something is coming. Hey, sometimes they'll eat it, sometimes they dart off. So practice casting, get good at casting. You can set up in the backyard, just practice pitching, set some targets out there, and just work on it. Look, one thing with casting in fishing is that it kind of equates to time on the water. Now, for those of us working stiffs that don't have a lot of time on the water, our alternative is to go out and practice. And I can tell you, when I practiced, I was catching a lot more fish. Okay, so that's a very simple one for just about anybody to improve, beginner or not. Work on your casting. Gear choice. Mistake number two, not using the proper gear for the technique. Now look, there is a ton of information out there on the interwebs nowadays, YouTube, there's blogs, there's all kinds of things on what to use for different techniques. And I'm going to give you an example of a mistake I made last week. Now, there's also a time where this could be a good choice, so let's just go over that really quick. I was throwing a crankbait. On mono, okay? Mono has a tendency to float. You can get some extra resistance with mono. A better choice for a crankbait would be fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon is probably a better choice for just about any baits that are sinking down into the water. Now there's braid, that's a whole nother topic and conversation. We don't want to confuse it here, but it can also be your choice of rod for the bait you're using. For instance, if we're throwing a weightless Senko and we're throwing it on a 7'6" extra heavy flipping stick, not really the best choice, okay? This video isn't necessarily about telling you what the best choice is, but just pointing out to pay attention to what we're using and try to pair the rod with the technique. Nowadays, a lot of rods give you technique examples on the rod blade, okay? iRod does that, Powell does it, Dobbins does it, a lot of companies do it. So just pay attention and try to pair the right rod to the technique. Now you can throw a weightless Senko on a spinning rod, and a lot of guys do that. There's nothing wrong with it. The advantage to casting over spinning is really control and power. That kind of touches on number three, which is fishing line and understanding what the different types of line are for, okay? There's mono, fluorocarbon, and there's braid. Okay, pretty easy to go out and research those three simple things, learn about what is each line does, and it can help you choose. Mono, for me, is top water. I like mono on spinner baits, okay? You can use fluorocarbon on spinner baits also, but I do like mono on spinner baits. Fluorocarbon, pretty much anything sinking, especially if it's a weightless bait. If you're throwing a weightless bait, you don't want the added drag of mono that wants to float to a Senko that wants to sink, it's going to have to pull that line, and you're going to have a lot of slack in there that's going to do this, right? And it's going to drag that line across the top, and then it's going to go down because the point of least resistance. And this is a really big one. Learn a few baits before moving on, and I've got a few suggestions here of what some good beginner baits are to learn. This will help in selecting the proper bait for the job. We're going to simplify. One, I have a Senko. Reason being, Senkos catch fish. Okay, all of these baits actually catch fish, and the idea in the beginner is for them to catch fish. It's a lot more fun to catch fish. It instills confidence, and it's fun. A Senko is a good one to learn because it catches fish. It's very simple and snag resistant, so you don't get frustrated from snags. Now, the other thing it's going to teach you along the same line is to feel. Feel for your bait for bites. This will help us down the road in learning other techniques as we develop that sensitivity for what a bite feels like. All right, folks, we made a good charge on the subscriber count the last week. We don't want to let off now. I really need your help here. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button down below. It's free. We have goals. We're going to give away some money badgers at 3,000 subscribers. If you don't know what a money badger is, go back and find that video 2 videos ago with the fish catches. The money badger put them in the boat. Now, the other thing you can do later on is use fluorocarbon to braid setup. Much more sensitive. You can get high visibility braid, and oftentimes you can see that braid flick when it gets bit. That adds more difficulty to it. All right, next bait would be a chatterbait or spinnerbait, and this may surprise you because I'm going to pick one of those, and it's going to be a spinnerbait. Much the same reason as the previous, catches fish. It's much more snag resistant than a chatterbait, and I think a spinnerbait is very underutilized these days. And a spinnerbait you can fish year round. You can get heavier spinnerbait, fish it down on the bottom. You can hold your rod tip up, fish it up high in the water column. Spinnerbait's very, very universal, very effective tool, and I think it's important to learn to use a spinnerbait, and you can cast it into cover. Crankbait, squarebill. Okay, squarebill was one of the first baits I ever used to fish. You can fish them from the bank, you can fish them from a boat, from a kayak, on a dock. Squarebill will work just about everywhere. Now, in the wintertime, you might want to move more towards that squarebill flat side because they're a little more subtle and tend to get bit more in cold water months. However, a squarebill, in my experience, will get bit 365 days a year. Bass just love them. There's always bass shallow. The final one, very simple. This is going to take us back to the very first thing I listed, a simple Texas rig. I prefer to use a beaver style bait. My choice would be the standard size Strike King Rage Bug, and there's a reason for that, and I'm going to go over it. Number one, with the Texas rig, it's what we're going to be pitching to targets, and in order to learn how to pitch and get control and be accurate, we need to have a bait on. Number two, the Strike King Rage Bug is multifaceted. It's a craw bait, pitches out, falls, those legs are kicking as it goes down, laying on the bottom. It's got a craw profile. And number three, you can retrieve it, swim it, and those legs are kicking. So I really like how universal it is. For beginning to cast to the end of cast, that bait is working for you. Look, you can go out and choose any kind of bait, whatever you might have, what you like. But these are some choices that I have found very, very effective. I'm trying to set you up for success here because it's a lot more fun. And as you're around longer, you can accumulate more things. But look, get proficient in these things I mentioned, okay? Mostly casting, feeling for bites, and then working a reaction bait. Experiment with those reaction baits. The spinner bait, the crankbait. Don't just cast it out and reel it back. Experiment. Maybe reel it, stop. Reel it, stop. With a spinner bait, it's going to come up. When you stop, it's going to go back down. With a crankbait, if a fish is trailing it and you stop, that bait stops, he's got a choice: eat it or swerve off. So experiment, get proficient, get confident with these baits, and then move on to adding some other things. Look, all of this stuff behind me and the stuff behind you over here can be overwhelming. Number two, it's very expensive, and it takes time to know when to use what. And look, none of us really know exactly. If we did, we'd be smacking them every single time out. That's just not how fishing works. Pick a few baits, learn about them. That'll cover you year-round. Those baits I just listed will cover you year-round. I'm Sean, the Average Angler. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. We're going to see you on the next one.